So, Prime Minister Abe, thank you for your friendship. Your partnership, and the progress that we've made together. I want to thank you and the people of Japan for being such extraordinary allies. Standing together, I have no doubt about what our nations can achieve. So as you say here, Ganbaru. Thank you. Question, I'd like to raise a question with regard to security. First, my question is addressed to Prime Minister Abe. President Obama, with regard to the defense of the Senkaku Islands. He had clearly stated his security stance based on the security treaty. And what kind of discussion did you have on the exercise of collective security rights? To President Obama, the following question, based on the security treaty. The obligation to defend the Senkaku Islands, this is the first time that you referred to this issue. Why did you mention this? Could you talk about the import of your statement? Prime Minister Abe, as interpreted. Through the talks with President Obama, as President Obama mentioned at the outset in his speech. Between our two countries we have the security treaty, and under the security treaty, all of the abilities and capabilities to perform the commitment is provided. And this includes all territories under the administration of Japan, inclusive of the Senkaku Islands. And any unilateral action to undermine Japan's administration of the Senkaku Islands will be opposed by the United States. We agreed on this point. On the exercise of the right of collective defense, presently in Japan the legal basis for security is being discussed and with regard to the stability of Japan and regional safety and stability. And to function the alliance effectively, and to contribute to the stability of the region we are making these studies. This is what I have explained to President Obama. Concerning such studies and examinations being made in Japan, this was welcomed and this would be supported. That was the position expressed by President Obama. President Obama, our position is not new. Secretary Hagel, our defense secretary, when he visited here. Secretary of State John Kerry when he visited here, both indicated what has been our consistent position throughout. We don't take a position on final sovereignty determinations with respect to Senkakus. But historically they have been administered by Japan and we do not believe that they should be subject to change unilaterally. And what is a consistent part of the alliance is that the treaty covers all territories administered by Japan. So this is not a new position, this is a consistent one. In our discussions, I emphasized with Prime Minister Abe the importance of resolving this. Issue peacefully, not escalating the situation, keeping the rhetoric low, not taking provocative actions. And trying to determine how both Japan and China can work cooperatively together. And I want to make that larger point. We have strong relations with China. They are a critical country not just to the region, but to the world. Obviously, with a huge population, a growing economy, we want to continue to encourage the peaceful rise of China. I think there's enormous opportunities for trade, development. Working on common issues like climate change with China. But what we've also emphasized. And I will continue to emphasize throughout this trip is that all of us have responsibilities to help. Maintain basic rules of the road and an international order so that large countries, small countries, all have to abide by what is considered just and fair, and that we are resolving disputes in peaceful fashion. And this is a message that I've delivered directly to the Chinese end. It's one that I think is entirely consistent with China being successful. I think the alternative is a situation in which large countries, like the United States or China or Russia or other countries, feel as if whenever they think it's expedient they can take actions that disadvantage smaller countries. And that's not the kind of world that is going to be stable and prosperous and secure over the long term. So we are invested in an international order. And that applies to a whole range of issues, including maritime issues. My hope is that China will continue to engage with us and other countries in the region where we do not. Take a position on the particular sovereignty of this piece of land or this rock, but we do take a position. In making sure that all countries are following basic international procedures in resolving these disputes. And if that happens, then I think not only will China be successful, but I think there's a great potential for Chinese and Japanese cooperation, Chinese and Vietnamese cooperation. cooperation with the Philippines and China, all of which will benefit the peoples of the region. Mr. Carney, the next question comes from Jim Acosta of CNN. Question, thank you, Mr. President. Arigato, Mr. Prime Minister. Mr. President, in regards to the Senkaku Islands. I just want to make sure that this is absolutely clear. Are you saying that the US would consider using military force were China to have some sort of military incursion in those islands to protect those islands? And how does that not draw another red line that you would have to enforce of putting US credibility? Your credibility on the line once again, as it was in the case with Syria and Russia? And on another key security issue, you mentioned North Korea in your meeting with the Prime Minister. Are you issuing a warning to North Korea that there should not be another nuclear test? And to Prime Minister Abe, do you have confidence in President Obama's assurances about your security when the U. S and the West were unable to stop Russia's advances in Ukraine? Thank you. President Obama, well, Jim, let me unpack that question because there's a whole bunch of assumptions in there, some of which I don't agree with. First of all, the treaty between the United States and Japan preceded my birth, so obviously. This isn't a red line that I'm drawing, it is the standard interpretation over multiple administrations of the terms of the alliance. Which is that territories under the administration of Japan are covered under the treaty. There's no shift in position. There's no red line that's been drawn. We're simply applying the treaty. At the same time, as I've said directly to the Prime Minister that it would be a profound mistake to continue to see escalation around this issue rather than dialogue and confidence-building measures between Japan and China. And we're going to do everything we can to encourage that diplomatically. With respect to the other issues that you raise, our position, Jim. The United States position is that countries should abide by international law, that those laws, those rules, those norms are violated when you gas children, or when you invade the territory of another country. Now, the implication of the question I think is that each and every time a country violates one of those norms, the United States should go to war, or stand prepared to engage militarily. And if it doesn't, then somehow we're not serious about those norms. Well, that's not the case. Right now, we have 87% of Syria's chemical weapons have already been removed from Syria. There's about 13% left. That's as a consequence of US leadership. And the fact that we didn't have to fire a missile to get that accomplished is not a failure to uphold those international norms, it's a success. It's not a complete success until we have the last 13% out. With respect to Russia and Ukraine, we've been very clear about the fact that there's not going to be a military solution to the problem in Ukraine. But we have already applied sanctions that have had an impact on the Russian economy, and we have continued to hold out the prospect, the possibility to resolve this issue diplomatically. there was some possibility that Russia could take the wiser course after the meetings in Geneva. So far, at least, we have seen them not abide by the spirit or the letter of the agreement in Geneva. And instead, we continue to see militias and armed men taking over buildings, harassing folks who are disagreeing with them. And destabilizing the region, and we haven't seen Russia step up and discourage that. On the other side, you've seen the government in Kiev take very concrete steps. In introducing an amnesty law and offering a whole range of reforms with respect to the constitution. That are consistent with what was discussed in Geneva. And my expectation is that if, once again, Russia fails to abide by both the spirit and the letter of what was discussed in Geneva, that there will be further consequences and we will ramp up further sanctions. That doesn't mean that the problem is going to be solved right away. These are difficult issues. But what we try to do is to make sure that we are very clear about what we stand for. What we believe in, and we are willing to take actions on behalf of those values, those norms, and those ideals. Question, and on North Korea? President Obama, and the question was. Question, is there a warning to North Korea to not conduct another nuclear test? President Obama, North Korea has engaged in provocative actions for the last several decades. It's been an irresponsible actor on the international stage for the last several decades. So our message on North Korea has been consistent throughout. They are the most isolated country in the world. they are subject to more international sanctions and international condemnation than any country in the world. As a consequence, their people suffer as much as any peoples in the world.